Okay, so welcome everyone. I appreciate you attending this evening's meeting. This is the general meeting of the Sierra Club Osage Group. My name is Carolyn Ompron, and I'm currently serving as the chair of the executive committee. And we're going to have three things this evening in our meeting. We're going to start off with the announcements of upcoming activities. We will also have a brief presentation related to the Proposition 1 use tax. And then we'll get to our featured speaker from the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project. And I'm going to let Jan Dye introduce our speaker later. So first things, just to kick it off, I just want to give you some information on upcoming activities, which now that the pandemic is waning, things are getting busy, which is great. We hope it stays that way. And I will, after I turn this over to someone else to talk, I will put the links to these activities so you can get more information on them in the chat. Because otherwise, you wouldn't be able to click on them. But if I put them in the chat, you can click on the links. So, and also some of these are not yet posted on our website, which is listed here at the top of the page. It's sierraclub.org/Missouri/Osage. So all these aren't on our website yet, but they all will. We will add them all. Some of them have just been planned. And then the other source for additional information is our Facebook page for Sierra Club Osage Group as well. So as you can see here, two things happening on March 24th. One's at 6, and then immediately following that at 7. At 6, we'll be having an in-district virtual meeting with 2 of our state representatives for the Columbia area. And the goal of that meeting is really to talk to them about upcoming legislation and hopefully influence their vote. Then the Climate Environment Commission and the Boone County Stormwater Management and the Columbia Sustainability Office are sponsoring a free showing of The Human Element. After you register, you get the link for the movie. You can watch it at your convenience. And then there'll be a panel discussion at 7 p.m. on the 24th focused on local climate action and what we can do here locally. We're going to be helping plant trees, native trees and shrubs in an area in Columbia that was disrupted by the building of a recent hiking and biking trail. So that's April 2nd. We have an outings hike on April 3rd at Gons Creek. We are back in business with lobby days after a 2-year break. So we'll have lobby day in Jefferson City on April 6th. We've adopted part of a trail, a 1/4 mile of trail on the Bear Creek Trail here in Columbia. And there'll be invasive plant removal on April 9th and on April 30th in the morning. I wanted to ask you all to mark your calendars for the Columbia Earth Day Festival. It's also returning, and it will be on April 24th, assuming good weather, and if not, the following week. And we will have a booth there. If anyone wants to help us with that, that'd be great. Then 2 more hikes are planned. May 15th, the Turkey Creek Interpretive Trail, and June 12th, the the Smith Creek Loop Trail, and you meet at that Rutherford Bridge Trailhead. In other news, I wanted to share that we participated as a co-host of a candidate forum on climate change and the environment for the City Council of Columbia candidates and for mayor. And that replay is available. And again, I'll put that link in the chat. And then we have completed our endorsement process for the local election here in the Columbia Boone County area. And so this is a recap. We recommend a yes vote. And this goes through the whole Sierra Club endorsement process that involves the Osage Group Political Committee and the Osage Group Executive Committee. And so as you can see here, we recommend a yes vote on Proposition 1, which we'll talk more about in a little bit for both Columbia and Boone County. For mayor, we've endorsed Barbara Buffalo. For Ward 3, Carl Scala. For Ward 4, Nick Foster. And for the 2 open seats on the Columbia Public Schools School Board, Blake Willoughby and Suzette Waters. So now that we've made these endorsements, we would ask everyone who's willing to go and volunteer for their campaigns, get a yard sign, mail postcards, knock on doors, or give money, whatever suits you. But part of our endorsement is to try and support the candidates and help them win. As you guys are probably aware, if you read the newsletters, we are heavily engaged in a campaign to get the Columbia City Council to commit to 100% renewable energy for Columbia Water and Light by 2030. We did a webinar, which is available on our Sierra Club Osage Group YouTube channel that you can watch to get all the details about this. It was about an hour-long webinar. The presentation is about 25 minutes and then Q&A. We had asked individuals who support this, who are Columbia residents or work here, to sign the Sierra Club petition, and I'll text these links. And then we're looking for organizations, and this can be any kind of organization, student, youth, religious, business, any kind of organization can sign an endorsement letter that they support this goal. And our target date to present these signed petitions and endorsement letters is May 2nd. And then we will now turn it over to our guest speakers for the Proposition 1 use tax, who are Justin Aldred, who is a Boone County Commissioner for the Southern District, and Sheila Plummer. So Justin, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Wonderful. So as she said, my name is Justin Aldred. I have the honor of being the Boone County Southern District Commissioner, and I just wanted to give some basic background as to how we got where we are today. This is going to be a little difficult over Zoom, but if you could raise your hand if you live within Columbia city limits. Perfect. Now, do we have anybody who just lives in unincorporated Boone County? Please speak up because I can't see all of you. Okay, I don't think I'm hearing any, but so if you live in the Columbia city limits on April 5th, you'll see a question on the ballot asking if a local use tax should be implemented twice. A box for the city of Columbia, one checkbox for the county of Boone. In 2018, the Supreme Court ruled in South Dakota versus Wayfair that states were allowed to adopt sales and use taxes from businesses not physically located in the state. So what that means is legally a sale takes place wherever the buyer happens to be or wherever their home address is. Since that time, 49 out of 50 states have already implemented this Wayfair or use tax ballot change. In June of 2021, Governor Parsons signed legislation into law that allowed Missouri to do the same and start collecting in 2023. But local governments, such as the city and the counties, still need to put that issue on the ballot. So currently, our local businesses and other businesses across the state lose sales because out-of-state online retailers are not subject to the same laws as our local businesses, who are required to remit sales and use taxes to other jurisdictions, but out-of-state businesses selling to Missourians do not. And I personally think that's one of the worst things. Our current system is set up to incentivize those that live in Missouri to only buy products from businesses outside the state of Missouri. So additionally, looking from the Boone County perspective, and the county perspective is what I look at almost every day, every single county around us has already passed the ballot measure. Audrain, Cooper, Callaway, Montauk, Cole, Howard, Randolph, which means that likewise, those that live in Boone County are incentivized to spend their money outside of Boone County if these ballot measures don't pass. So I don't like being last, and right now we're falling behind. So I hope that gets fixed on April 5th. Quite honestly, what we have now is not sustainable. It's also why the county auditor highlighted that as a concern in her budget message, because as a county, our revenues stay flat or they're going down, but the price for things like Rockford Road goes up, price for equipment and machinery goes up, things like bidders, the cost of wood, steel, and fuel are all on the rise. So with that, I've talked to a lot of different people with a lot of different viewpoints on taxes. Some say, hey, it's too high here. Some say, hey, it's too low there. But I would urge that it should at least be equal between online retailers and our local brick-and-mortar businesses. With that, that's my piece. Thank you so much for having me. And I have some resources, some websites and literature I'm going to drop in the chat, but I'll turn it over to Sheila.
We hear from reliable sources that your organization is in favor of this. And I've got all these wonderful things to tell you to convince you. So I want you to listen and share it with others who are not Sierra Club members. For those voting in the city of Columbia, there will be 2 questions on the ballot about the use tax. One for the city and one for Boone County. The increase will be only for on online purchases. Please check yes on both items, regardless of where you live. Now, he didn't see anybody, but I had my hand up because I live in unincorporated Boone County. As stated, there are currently no taxes on online purchases in Boone County or in the city of Columbia. The increase will be exactly what the current sales tax is when you go to a brick and mortar in town, in the county. So, and you don't get hit twice, one time. How will this revenue be used? It will be used to support core functions of government, including public safety and road and bridge maintenance. Now, I don't know about you, but I live, it's not a dead end, it's not a cul-de-sac, it's just, there's nothing when you go past our house. It was very nice the last 3 weeks when a truck came down and cleared the road multiple times. That's why I'm going to vote yes on Prop 1. It includes snow removal, street repairs, 911 service, government buildings, government building maintenance, public safety, fire, garbage services, and salaries for everything mentioned, including the trucks, gas, equipment necessary for these functions to be done. Let me give you a personal story. Both my husband and I have autoimmune diseases. We have used 911 for medical assistance more than once. It is a great comfort to me to know that 3 minutes after our call to 911, personnel are walking through our door, not pulling up in front of the house, not coming down the driveway, but coming through the door and attending to whatever the emergency is. We have grandchildren and great-grandchildren and a pond out the front door. When the children are with us, they are highly supervised. The grandchildren are all adults living in their own home, but when they come, they think that if the pond looks frozen, they can slide out on it. And I'm yelling, no, 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 no. But it is a tremendous source of comfort to me to know that if necessary, help is 3 minutes away. I do the majority of my shopping online. I've really enjoyed no tax. However, the safety of my family and myself, or paying 1.75% on my online purchases, is not a question. I like knowing that the road will be clear, the trash will be picked up. We already have a deficiency. We have lots of city and county jobs that aren't filled. 50% of our income under sales tax is lost from online purchases. So thank you, Sierra Club, for thinking this is a good idea and supporting it. And please just stop people on the street and tell them. Any questions? None whatsoever.
You can either type your question into the chat or unmute yourself and ask it if anyone has any questions or discussion. The reason that Sierra Club supports this is, one, we'd like to see a level playing field for local businesses, because there's potentially some carbon emissions advantages to shopping locally. Additionally, we feel that, you know, having both Boone County and Columbia have a little bit of additional revenue will mean that we're more likely to get funding for the kind of urban planning projects, county development projects that we want, as well as for the possible in the City of Columbia actions on the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. And then also in the City of Columbia, where we already have approved the Parks and Rec sales tax, if this tax gets applied to online purchases, that will increase the revenue for the Parks and Rec sales tax as well. And so that also means that we would have additional money in the city to protect green space and parkland. So those are some of the reasons why the two groups that do the endorsement process supported a yes vote. So with that, is it? Oh, thank you, Sheila. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, well then, Sheila and Justin, I wanted to thank you for joining
Yes.
us. We
Thank
really
you so much.
appreciate it. And
We
next,
appreciate being heard.
you're welcome. And everybody get out and vote. Of course, that's the main thing. We all got to vote. Okay, I'm going to put my screen back up here for a second, so we can I can introduce Jan. Okay, so next up we have Jan Dye, who's our meeting organizer for tonight, and she is the current Osage Group Executive Committee Vice Chair and our treasurer. So we very much thank her for her service, and I'm going to turn it over to Jan to introduce our speaker.
Hi, this is Jan Dye. Before we start, I just want to again reiterate that if you're not speaking, you need to keep your microphone muted, just so we can cut down on any background noise that happens in your area. Also, at the end of the presentation, we will have a question and answer period. If you have a question, I would ask that you post it in the chat area. When you have a question, just type it in there. And I will be watching the chat to see if there are questions. And at the end of the presentation, we'll go through all of those questions and get them answered for you. Let's see, what else? I think that's it. So on to the main event. Sherri Duggar is our speaker tonight. She is the executive director of the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project. And she has a ton of experience. I was just reading her write-up on the SRAP website, and it's extensive, very extensive and very impressive. She's prior to joining SRAP, she served as the executive director. She had executive director roles in Women, Food and Agriculture Network and the Indiana Farmers Union. She actually is coming to us tonight from Indiana, which is a nice perk of being able to do these virtual meetings. We get speakers that we normally would not be able to get like this. She served as a policy and communications consultant for American Grass-Fed Association, as a Midwest outreach consultant for Earth Justice, and as a rural affairs consultant for the Humane Society of the United States. She is a supporter of local and regional food systems, environmental sustainability, and humane animal agriculture. And at this time, I will turn the meeting over to Sherri and let her impart her wisdom to us. Thank you.
I have a feeling we have shared wisdom. I will go ahead and share my screen, and so you can see, can you all see the PowerPoint that I have up? Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Jan, for the invite, for asking me to come and speak to you all today. I'm going to try to remove, I won't be able to see you all. So if you're waving at me or asking questions or anything like that, you'll have to speak up because I won't be able to actually see you. But I am Sherri Duggar, as Jan mentioned. I live in Spencer, Indiana. We have a small farm here with, I have it with my husband, Randy. We moved actually to this farm, to this property in late 2020, in part because I wanted to live in an area of the state where CAFOs weren't prevalent. We have at the moment, I think, one CAFO in our county, a number that I very much hope won't change. I also want to get away from the pesticides that were being sprayed around our property, our previous property, every year and on me at times. On our property here, we have miniature donkeys, chickens, goats, alpacas, dogs, cats, and honeybees. And prior to coming to SRAP, as Jan mentioned, I was executive director for a couple of different organizations, and I've worked as a consultant for a few national organizations. I arrived at SRAP with really, really big shoes to fill, and I see that he's on here tonight. So hello to you, Terry Spence. You were an amazing and a big challenge for me as I came in, because Terry was very much loved by everyone at SRAP and everyone that SRAP works with. And I really felt a challenge to come in and to be able to do the work that I needed to do and to fill his big shoes. But I hope that I'm doing really well with SRAP. We have done a lot of really, really great work over the last 2 years, in large part to the foundation that Terry left me, the very strong foundation that he left me when he retired from working for SRAP. So I did also want to mention, I facilitate the Midwest Sustainable Agriculture Working Group, which is a collaboration between 20 or so organizations with shared core principles working together to build relationships and share our work at the state level and to build capacity around sustainable agriculture initiatives. So if anyone is interested in learning more about that, I would certainly be willing to talk about that at a later time. So we will move on. So what is SRAP? SRAP collaborates with communities to protect themselves from the devastating public health, environmental, and socio-economic damages caused by industrial livestock production. Our field operations team includes technical experts, independent farmers, and rural residents who, like the communities that we serve, have experienced the impacts of industrial livestock production firsthand. Our team offers technical and strategic support to help people educate, mobilize their communities, navigate regulatory processes, engage lawmakers, publicize their stories, and ultimately build coalitions to reject harmful and industrial agricultural practices and to advocate for a socially responsible food future. We also at SRAP, we link the people most profoundly impacted by our broken food system with a network of academic institutions, government agencies, public interest groups, and political players who can help. We connect those local efforts with state and national movements to unite in our cause, collectively working to bring back the socially responsible, independent farms needed to feed America. So we have 4 program areas, and I would like to talk a little bit about each of those. We provide free assistance to communities threatened by industrial livestock operations through these 4 areas. I'll first talk about our newest programs, which we're really excited about. One of them is called the Food and Farm Network. This is an extension of our core mission to offer outreach and base building, education, and leadership development opportunities. This free national network builds on SRAP's strengths and the team's decades-long experience to advise and mobilize advocates beyond that CAFO issue. The network engages farmers and community members to advocate on behalf of regenerative food systems, on social justice issues, climate initiatives, public health, animal welfare, and other critical issues. With regular opportunities to connect with state, regional, and national coalitions and organizations, plus additional access to training events and educational materials, we hope that our network participants will learn to more effectively influence policymakers and U.S. residents alike on the food and agriculture concerns that matter most. So I should also say that most Food and Farm Network activities are not new to SRAP. In fact, our organizers have been doing this kind of work for decades. What's new here is that we're really devoting more resources to these efforts and taking a more consistent strategic approach to improve our effectiveness. So what that looks like, it breaks down into 3 areas. We're looking at leadership development. So we want to be able to identify emerging leaders in impacted communities and help them become more effective advocates by either offering them advocacy training, one-on-one mentorships, or even networking opportunities. We're hoping to do a lot more coalition building and facilitation, and Ashlyn Busick, who's on with us tonight, is really kind of leading this charge. We hope to support broader advocacy efforts by continuing to engage impacted communities in state and regional coalitions. And we want to do more around policy advocacy work. So we hope to engage community members in state and national policy initiatives, train participants to effectively engage policymakers, and to produce policy resources and send out action alerts to foster ongoing advocacy. So another new program that we launched last year was called the Contract Grower Transition Program. So I don't know if you all know, but rural communities, farm workers, public health folks, the environment and animals are all harmed by industrial agriculture. We all know this. Rural residents living near industrial livestock operations understand that, but what they may not know is that production contract farmers who operate some of these facilities suffer too. So they're often overlooked. These small farmers are being exploited every day at the hands of the agribusiness giants who control today's increasingly consolidated and concentrated industrial system. Unchecked consolidation and vertical integration, where corporations control multiple stages of the production process, have created an imbalance of power, which allows industry interests to manipulate the marketplace, to trap these farmers in exploitative contracts, to push down the prices paid to farmers and ranchers, and to drive independent producers out of business. So last year, or it was probably actually 2020, we identified the need for a contract grower, a producer transition program, which we actually officially launched last year in 2021. We hired 2 former contract growers to become community organizers and advocacy leaders on SREP's field operations team, working under another former contract grower, Craig Watts, who some of you may have heard of. Through this program, we plan to continue to facilitate advocacy and organizing training for additional growers, and we'll invite them to join the expanding SRAP team as we're able to. When possible, we also hope to connect some of these growers to other ally organizations advocating on behalf of socially responsible agriculture systems who wish to hire former contract growers to join their teams. So we're also working right now to conduct a landscape analysis. We just sent out a request for proposals today on this to guide the program moving forward. We have a goal of identifying and researching the organizations, the resources, the assistance, the opportunities and tools needed that can help growers in various stages of transition or hoping to get out of that system. We'll be establishing a contract grower advisory group to help inform us and to help us do the program design of this new program. And we'll be developing a toolkit for the program that will include resources, as I mentioned, organizations, opportunities, and ideas for growers who are either already out of the contract system or they're hoping to exit the system that they might want to consider to continue to generate income for their families. There's no better advocate to engage rural communities facing threats of incoming or expanding industrial livestock facilities than the people who also were harmed by the industrial system. We truly believe this, and that's why we hire the staff as we do. The SREP staff members who lead this program are former contract growers who have experienced injustices firsthand. This unique perspective makes them especially effective champions of agriculture reform and enables them to offer invaluable guidance to rural residents suffering due to livestock operations, and also to help them do outreach to current growers struggling to leave the industry. So we're really excited about that program. Craig Watts is the director. He's one of our field operations team directors, and he's helping me to build out that program. And we've hired Michael Diaz and Susie Crutchfield, who are also former contract growers who are doing some great work. We had a Facebook Live event earlier today to talk about some of the issues and to talk specifically about their stories and what they experienced as contract growers. Our last 2 programs I want to talk about really quickly. Water Rangers. We are in the process of expanding our Water Rangers programming. It's the only concentrated animal feeding operation focused water quality monitoring training program that's offered throughout the U.S. free of charge to any interested community. So this is a CAFO related water monitoring training program. We collaborate with communities wanting to hold concentrated animal feeding operations accountable for water pollution by training rural residents in EPA approved water testing techniques, providing tools to collect and analyze water samples, and offering instruction on documenting and reporting pollution violations to US EPA, local and state regulators. So by providing these agencies with high quality documentation and evidence, our program has successfully compelled these regulators to take action against polluting CAFOs. So we're hoping to build that out. We're hoping first to build it out in the Midwest region, particularly in, I can't remember if Missouri is on, I should have looked this up, but I think Illinois, potentially Missouri, Michigan, Indiana, some of the states in Wisconsin for sure, some of the states that are really dealing with a lot of these CAFO issues. We're hoping to train our staff to do this water monitoring and also to enable them to help train community members and community groups to do more water monitoring to hold corporations accountable. Our last program is community support. This is really the core of what SRAP does. It's the heart of our program or our organization. Our community support program embodies SRAP's commitment to meeting the crisis needs of communities facing threats of incoming or existing industrial livestock operations. Our team offers technical and strategic support to help people educate and mobilize their communities. They help to navigate regulatory processes, engage lawmakers, publicize stories, and ultimately to build coalitions to reject this harmful industrial agriculture system. And also, as I mentioned, to advocate for a socially responsible food future. So what does that community support look like? I put this together today. I just wanted to throw out some of these numbers just to show you some of the work that SRAP has been doing just over the last couple of years. In 2020, we had 150 SOS cases. We actually refer to that now. We've changed it. We're calling it community support or community help requests, I should say, including 33 new cases that came in 15 states in 2020. In 2021, we saw 49 new community help requests in 17 states, while providing ongoing support for communities in 146 existing efforts across 28 states. So what we essentially saw during the last 2 years is that COVID did not slow those requests down. We, in fact, in some cases felt like we were seeing an increase in these requests because maybe these permits were kind of slipping through and people weren't paying so much attention because there was a lot of other stuff going on. There was a big pandemic, et cetera. Travel did stop for our team. So we were unable to actually go to the communities where we were working, but the SRAP team adapted beautifully. We've done a ton of great work, and I want to talk a little bit about that in some of these next slides. So in 2020, our work helped to prompt the withdrawal of 25 CAFO permits. We were able to install 26 CAFO expansion construction projects. We were able to enact or improve 33 local ordinances. We helped to trigger 20 regulatory or enforcement actions, and we contributed to 49 public comment periods for permit applications. I know there was a lot more than what I'm going to be telling you here, but those are just some of the numbers to capture some of the work that was done in 2020. Likewise, in 2021, we also saw a lot of really great work happening. We were able to host some educational meetings online with a lot of folks in attendance. We engaged in public comment periods again. We stalled the expansion of more CAFOs. We assisted groups calling for the enaction of or improvement of local ordinances. We were triggering regulatory processes again and actions and really causing permit applications to be withdrawn or denied. So there's been a ton of really great work. The work is never ending, unfortunately. If we can all work ourselves out of a job someday, that would be terrific. That would be a huge success, but we will keep going until then. So in terms of other contributions that SRAP has been working on over the past couple of years, there's been so much that we've accomplished. We completed a series of CAFO guides for all 50 states. These guides, which detail the state and federal laws and regulatory processes related to industrial livestock operations, are going to be designed to assist community groups in more effectively responding to new or existing CAFOs. We hope to publicly release these guides in 2022. We're in the process of getting them designed now. It's kind of a big haul to get 50 different guides made, so that we're hoping that we can get those out as quickly as possible. We also did an extensive amount of research and released an analysis of 15 Wisconsin dairy CAFOs that benefit from California's greenhouse gas cap and trade program. So I don't know how much you all know about these methane digesters and the funding that those operations are getting from our government, but the cap and trade program, which is supposed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, actually benefits CAFO owners building or operating methane digesters for the production of factory farm gas. This research that actually Lynn Henning on our team did showed that despite numerous documented environmental and regulatory compliance issues, CAFOs are able to increase their herd sizes through programs like these from the government through taxpayer money, creating more waste and pollution in rural Wisconsin while receiving incentives from government initiatives. So we came out with that research. It's been very useful in some of our movement building and working with other organizations trying to fight back against this support of these operations. For 2 years, we've also hosted SRAP Live. I don't know if any of you were able to make it, but it was a virtual summit both years featuring workshops and expert presentations addressing industrial agriculture impacts, regenerative agriculture, environmental justice issues, and really telling the stories of our community engagements, the stories of the people that are out there dealing with these operations coming into their communities. So I hope that if you didn't make it to those events online, we do have them online, and we can send you to the link to go view them now. They're still there. We also have continued to create materials for use by community groups opposing incoming or expanding operations, including research, fact sheets, several mapping projects that we're working on. We are in the process of undertaking one that's particularly exciting. We're hoping to build a GIS portal that displays data from disparate government maps, so locations of impaired waterways, schools, historical landmarks, et cetera, and to bring it into a one-stop shop mapping tool for communities to be using for when they're facing these industrial livestock operations coming in. So that's going to be pretty exciting, and I hope very helpful for efforts around the country for people who are opposing these operations. I want to talk about what's happening in Missouri, but I think that the better people to talk about what's happening in Missouri are the people in Missouri. So at this point, I'm going to pass the baton to both Scott Dye and Ashlyn and see what you all want to talk about. I put up some notes here just to prompt your memory, but either one of you can take the floor for this one.
Ashlyn, which one do you want to take?
You go first. I didn't know we were going to be spotlighted. Go, you go ahead.
So as usual, we're well prepared. Some of you may have seen, well, I sent it around for everybody to see the story. It ran in the Missouri Independent, and it's picking up now in several other news sources too. Big spill, 500,000 gallons, 500,000 gallons last March 2021 at a facility in Mercer County up against the Iowa line, Smithfield, Somerset complex. This was just a horrible operator error where they forgot to turn off some valves. They were trying to pull water off their lagoon covers, and he didn't shut the right valves and left some open, and it wound up pulling 100,000 gallons off of 5 different lagoons of pure hog waste and dumping it at about a dozen small tributary streams, and then Medicine Creek and Little Medicine Creek. The fine that came back was $18,800.50. So that's 4 cents a gallon. So just to put that in perspective, no, nobody on this call is much inclined to go pollute, but if you want to, now you know the cost. You can take a bucket of crap, go down to the stream, throw it in there, it costs you 4 cents. You can do 20 of them for like, $1. So anyway, it was ridiculous. We called about on that. It would not be so galling had this facility not been spilling waste for 30 years, literally 30 years. And I believe they've had 46 spills and about somewhere around 1.5 million gallons of total spills over the last 30 years. So Ashlyn, why don't you talk about what we got coming up this year with site-specific permits and statewide general permits?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Ashlyn Busick. You all know Scott, but I am, if any of you know Terry Spence, who is on here, I'm his granddaughter and therefore have been a longtime family friend of Scott and Jan's. In fact, I just ran across a picture the other day of us all, I think probably about 25 years ago, getting ready to go on a trip to farm meet or something. Anywho, I'm in Trenton, Missouri, and I work with Scott and work with a few other people who joined this call tonight. We've been working really hard with some of our partners and some of the community groups that we've assisted, like Sherri talked about, throughout the state to really have a more active presence with Missouri Department of Natural Resources. And so one of the things that is coming up and has come about because of a lot of that activity is we're getting 3 stakeholder meetings to discuss the renewal of that CAFO permit. It's basically a template, but there are 2 different templates. There's one kind of dictated by the Clean Water Act. It's a NPDES based permit. And then there's one that's more of a state general permit. So those are coming up, and I'm going to try to include the link in the chat if I remember. But we would love for anyone interested to listen in. They're going to be hybrid, both virtual and in person. So the more people listening in and aware of what's going on, the better. And I'm also going to include, speaking of just working with partners, I'm going to include in the chat too, if some of you aren't signed up for action alerts from Missouri Coalition for the Environment. They're one of the groups that we work really closely with, and they have, it's called the CAFO Action Network, and they send out alerts for opportunities to either offer public comment or alerts about new CAFOs that are proposed or new actions that DNR is taking, really informative and ways that you can opt in to be more involved in those activities. So, SB 391, I guess if people are curious about the status of local health ordinances, we could talk about that. Other people may be well informed. I don't know. Scott, maybe I'll let you take that one.
I would say people would like to hear about the status on that, just to bring us up to
Scott.
date on.
Scott, you're muted.
That'll work a lot better. I was going to call on Cheryl Markham from Cedar County, one of our Missouri collaboration members who works on CAFOs, and let her give an update, because Cedar County is one of the two that are have stood up for all of us and are fighting this thing all the way through. So Cheryl, if you don't mind.
Sure. Very recently, the parties to the case, which is my Cedar County Commission and the Cooper County Health Department, Friends for Responsible Agriculture, and 3 farmers who filed a lawsuit against the state, Governor Parson, the Clean Water Commission, and the Air Conservation Commission, basically. We argued at the circuit level at the Cole County Circuit Court. It took almost 2 years to receive a ruling, and Judge Green ruled in favor of the state, which meant that all of our health ordinances were not going to stand. It was a really hard decision for the parties to decide to appeal the case to the Missouri Supreme Court. At least my commission was facing threats from Robert Brundage, who's the attorney for most of Missouri's big ag organizations. We were facing threats of lawsuits, but my county commissions somehow mustered up courage, and mine was able to vote to appeal. Cooper County Health Board voted to appeal. Everybody voted to appeal. It was not an easy decision for many. We don't know when the date is that we will be heard. Our attorney, Stephen Jeffrey, says that we've been issued a number, which means that the Supreme Court has decided to hear our case. So we expect it to happen in 9 to 12 months. And in the meantime, the way we're dealing with it in Cedar County, my commissioners finally decided that they are going to go ahead and enact our health ordinance. And for example, they just recently received a new application for one, and the application they received falls within the parameters of our ordinance, so it will be approved. But for those that don't fall within our parameters, they are going to just tell the people that it's outside the parameters. You're not allowed to do it. But pending the Supreme Court ruling, we just aren't going to enforce that part of our health ordinance. And if the court rules in our favor, then you will be liable. And so we're facing some threats, written threats about that. But my commissioners feel like they're in a safe place to go ahead, and they voted to appeal.
Thank you,
I'd be happy to
Cheryl.
take any questions.
Didn't want to put you on the spot there, but I knew you would be right on point with it.
Well, I'm happy to be able to talk about it. I'm really proud of the Cedar County Commission for standing up when the other commissions across the state opted not to.
Thank you all for being put on the spot. I appreciate all of you talking and contributing to the conversation. I guess the last point is we do have a very special report coming. We don't want to say too much about it right now. We're in the process of talking to media about it, but I think you will all find the report that Scott Dye, among many others on our team, worked very hard on. Very interesting when we come out with it, hopefully in a few weeks here. So anything else to add for Missouri specific, Scott or Ashlyn, before I move on?
They don't call it misery for no reason.
So we've got to keep positive, Scott. We got to keep positive.
That's right.
All right. I won't go through these detail bullet by bullet, but SRAP has a long and important history of being on the front lines for individuals and groups confronting the devastating effects of concentrated animal feeding operations. So while those responses are critical, we have seen federal, state, and local policies become more and more favorable for market concentration and industrial livestock development. This presents a problem that must be dealt with not only reactively, but proactively as well. So these proactive approaches must begin with understanding how policy and policymakers are currently helping factory farms proliferate and the importance of advocating for policy shifts that promote socially responsible agriculture production. Socially responsible production allows for more care for animals, neighbors, and the environment, but also is a viable path for combating factory farms. So this slide just gives a short list of the types of policies we support and what we don't support. So moving on, when we talk about federal policy, we have a ton of opportunity. Joe Biden won the presidency on a campaign that was committed to rooting out the systemic racism in our laws, policies, institutions, and hearts, and addressing environmental and climate justice. So there is some great legislation that's being introduced to promote regenerative focused independent farmers, to halt environmental injustices, and to mitigate climate change. The Farm System Reform Act was one of them that was introduced. It calls for major agricultural reforms to support independent family farmers, to protect rural communities and public health, and overhaul the corporate agriculture system by placing a moratorium on new CAFOs and eventually banning all large CAFOs, among other things. The Client Stewardship Act was introduced to increase funding to expand several USDA conservation and renewable energy programs. It would have set aside funding for socially disadvantaged and new and beginning farmers and ranchers. It would restore wetlands, support voluntary climate stewardship practices on more than 100 million acres of farmland, plant more than 15 billion trees. There was a ton of really great stuff in that piece of legislation. I don't actually know where that stands. I should have also looked that up today, but I didn't have time. But if you are interested in either of those bills, I would definitely encourage you to start doing a little bit of research on those and to supporting those if they do get further along. We have seen a lot of movement around GIPSA, which is the Grain Inspection, Packers, and Stockyard Administration legislation. That's about strengthening the Packers and Stockyards Act to protect those family farmers and ranchers that I spoke of earlier, the contract growers, to help restore mandatory country of origin labeling requirements for beef and pork and expand for dairy products. I don't know if you all are familiar, but the product of USA labeling that is on a lot of meat products is in fact on a lot of products that have come from overseas, from other countries. So if an animal is brought to the United States, if it's shipped over live on a boat, it can come over to the United States, go through a USDA processing plant, be processed and put into packaging and marked product of the USA, even though it was raised somewhere else and never spent any time alive on US soil. So we're trying to get, obviously that changed in our legislation, as well as prohibiting the United States Department of Agriculture from labeling these meat products product of the USA. So beyond those measures, we know we need really aggressive, large-scale action. So the 2023 Farm Bill is the federal government's big opportunity to take that campaign platform that Biden had to the policy level and to hold multinational corporate agribusinesses accountable for their pollution, to reduce our agriculture system's climate impact, to protect our world, and to make sure farmers, consumers, farm and local food system workers, and impacted communities all have a seat at the table when it comes to decision making. So I would just think we should take a moment and pause and remind ourselves that regenerative and resilient pasture-based farms can't be scaled to the size that industrial operations can. And in fact, I don't think we really want them to be. We want to see the replication of these smaller farms dotting the landscape all over the country so that many more farmers can start and grow operations to feed their communities fresh, healthy, and regeneratively raised foods without the externalized costs to our local environments, our climate, our health, and the future of our world. So I thought I'm getting near the end, and I should at least, at the very least, explain a little bit about socially responsible agriculture and how we define that. So with industrial livestock production, of course, as we all know, comes injustice to the environment, to people, to animals, and to the planet. Today's consolidated food and agriculture system drives independent family farmers off the land. It abuses food system workers. It perpetuates social and racial injustices. It pollutes our air and water, exacerbates climate change, compromises animal welfare, extracts wealth from rural communities, and damages public health. In short, it harms every aspect of life. Socially responsible agriculture, on the other hand, can rebuild critically needed topsoils. It can reduce water and air pollution. It can strengthen rural economies and support human health and food security, all while providing climate resiliency. So with socially responsible agriculture, we all thrive. And so with that, I would just invite you all to get involved with SRAP in any way that you can to engage in some of the efforts, particularly our Food and Farm Network in advocating for better food and agriculture systems. And thank you for having me to talk with you all tonight. Thank you for all of your interest in these topics and for doing the work that you all do. And I will open it up to questions.
Okay, I do see that there are a few questions in the chat. So we'll start with, let's see, Cheryl Markham had a question. She asked, when contract growers exit their contractual relationships, are they able to earn a living farming outside the contract grower culture?
We certainly hope so. So there are programs with other organizations that can help actually transform their farm into something else. So they will work with them either. Mercy for Animals actually has a program called Transformation, which works with contract growers to actually help them transition those barns where those animals were living into growing hemp, growing mushrooms, growing some other kind of a plant-based product that they can then get to market. So the intent, and actually I have a phone call scheduled on Friday to discuss the work that Mercy for Animals is doing and figure out how we can support their program. But really the intent is to figure out how they can survive and their family, they can take care of their families beyond that system. So for sure, if it involves transitioning their farm, absolutely, we're going to try to help them do that. And other organizations are out there trying to help them too.
Okay. See, we've got another one from Christine Dewar. She asks, let's see, why do the CAFO owners want to keep doing what they're doing, even though it hurts our air and water and soil? What is their defense?
That's a really good question. So I guess there's two different types of CAFO owners. So if you're talking about the contract growers that are sort of living with these contracts and like poultry growers, for instance, 70% of them, I think the last percentage that I heard, 70% of them, if they're only existing on the poultry growing operation for their families, if that's the sole income, they're living at the poverty level. So you certainly can't say that, it's a wealthy endeavor for these growers. I think there are some CAFO operators that are really building strong businesses out of this, and they're receiving government funds. They're receiving subsidies to the tune of, I believe, about $25 billion to the government that are taxpayer money going to support a system that can help them expand and grow. As I mentioned earlier, these methane digesters that are being built is another way for these CAFO owners to add more layers of income to their operations. So when they're incentivized to grow and to stay in business, a lot of these owners will do just that. They will build operations all over the country in lots of different counties around the country, and it's a profit game for a lot of folks. It just depends on which end you fall. So if there's a defense there, I guess it's that they're a quote unquote family farm feeding their families is what they're probably going to say, but I don't know that that's actually the case. These are corporations and they are controlled by an industry interest rather than trying to do the right thing and feed communities and be a good neighbor, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Carolyn Ompron has a couple of questions. First one is there a way for the U.S. to implement product of origin labeling without violating global trade agreements? I definitely like the labeling, but I know there were issues with Canada. That's her first question.
Yeah.
Second, oh, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Is there more? Sorry.
Well, just go ahead with that one and I'll give you the next one.
I know that there's pressure from other countries. There's definitely pressure from other countries and other, again, corporate interests that are making it hard to get the product, the cool country of origin labeling back in place. Now, I will say that it actually was in place for a time and it was actually removed. So it was in legislation, it was removed. So it's not that we can't get it back. I think there's just a lot of industry interests at play and a lot of powerful interests at play that are keeping it where it is today. So I don't know that, it violates global trade agreements specifically. I'm not into policy that much to be able to answer that question. I apologize for that. But I know that there are definitely interests that are pushing back on country of origin labeling.
Okay, and her next question, she asked, are consumers helping at all in the fight, specifically with the increased purchases of organic foods, free-range eggs, and things of that nature?
I think with COVID, we certainly saw how fragile our food system was and certainly came to understand that, this industrial system is not set up for crisis. Where it is, the larger the system, the less flexible it is. And so what we saw were a lot of local farmers being able to, answer the call for when our grocery store shelves went empty. A lot of people were then suddenly looking around like, where can I buy food? Where can I get my food to feed my family? So a lot of these farmers were really doing a brisk business during the early days of the COVID pandemic, whenever the grocery stores had a lot of empty shelves. Unfortunately, I feel like, and I was being interviewed recently, I think I said this there, I feel like the collective memory is a little short. And so once the grocery store shelves fill back up again, people sort of go back to what's easiest, because what's easiest is to go to one place and to get all of your groceries and to go home and feed your family. And I understand that. And we have to figure out a way to build a system that makes it so that we can support our local farmers and our local food producers. And it doesn't involve driving from farm to farm to farm to farm to farm all over the state in order to be able to do that. So there's a lot of problems with it. I think there's a lot of interest. I know the ASPCA actually did a survey with consumers to find out whether or not the knowledge that they had about the factory farm system and what they saw during COVID, whether that influenced their buying habits. And it did, from their survey results, it did change buying habits. I don't know whether it will stick, however.
Yeah. So I've got a question also. There's another question here, but I'm going to slip mine in first.
Okay.
So back a few slides, you had a list of accomplishments for 2021 and 2020, I believe.
Yeah.
And I would be really interested in hearing what kind of strategies or methods you use to do some of those things. Like how did this, like the very first one that you prompted the withdrawal of 25K for permits, how did you do that?
Can I have you ask Scott, not on a recorded video?
Now you're going to think that I asked you this on purpose, but I didn't. I'm really
no.
How do you do all, like, what kind of strategies are you using for these things?
I'm answering that seriously though, because I don't. Yeah. We try, like, our policy is not to talk strategy on video.
Oh, okay, all right.
But so there's lots of strategies. The thing is though, is that we have to sometimes try them all. I think it's a matter of how you, so if you look at that list, there's different things that we did. There's public comment periods, there's regulatory actions that we went after. You could look at wetlands, you could look at historical data around, the area. You could look at whether there's a school nearby. There's all kinds of things that you can try to consider when going against one of these operations. Which one works, it just depends, or maybe none of them will work. To be honest, we lose a lot of fights too. It just depends. There's a lot of, as I mentioned, there's heavy industry interest here, and so we're fighting a big battle. And these community groups are fighting a big battle whenever they don't want this operation to come in. So I don't think there's not one strategy. There's just that we, try a lot of different things depending on what the skills are that the community brings to the table, what the group is facing, whether or not there's a deadline of something that needs to be commented on right away, or there's, something happening right around the corner that we have to really act on quickly. Whether the community is willing to organize is a big thing. We make sure that the community is going to do this work, not us going in and just doing it for them, because we want to leave capacity. We want to make sure that the folks on the ground living, around these operations know what to do to protect themselves when SRAF goes on to the next case. So, I don't want to speak specifically to strategy, because we want to make sure that our communities are protected and that they can use this strategy to move forward and try to fight these cases whenever they come up. But I do think there's a lot of different ways, and certainly you can talk to Scott and he'll tell you all about it.
Believe me, I hear a lot about it already.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't want to share more. Ashlyn or Scott, do you have anything to add to that doesn't give away trade secrets?
Well, I was gonna say, Susan Fair is on here, and her community's example up in Livingston County is a perfect story to share. It's a very, very big story. There's so much context there, but it's history. So I think it's okay to share some of it, and hold on, I gotta yell at people to be quiet. Sorry. But Susan's community up there in Livingston County, they had a CAFO proposed, let's see, just north of Chillicothe. And actually some of the pigs on Sherri's presentation were from a farm up there, one of the direct neighbors to the location. And their community, Poozy Neighbors United, is what they're named. And actually they have a very active Facebook page if you want to follow. They put out a lot of great information about what's happening in the state, but it's called Friends of Poozy. Susan, you could link it if you want to in the chat, if you're still listening. But their process was basically taking the route of every public comment and publicly available action through DNR's permitting process. So requesting a public hearing from DNR, submitting hundreds of comments about the facility, obtaining legal counsel to help. Steve Jeffries, you guys, I'm sure have all heard of him, to help with that, and just carrying it on, and so much public education, even bigger like state, like DNR rulemaking actions connected to this story. So it's a big, long story, and so many communities have years upon years of this type of battle, but they ultimately withdrew the permit. And I don't want to belittle the story. There's so much good, but I also don't know how much Sherri wants me to share in there. So,
well,
yeah.
Thanks for sharing that much. I appreciate it. And then we'll go on to, we've got some more questions here. Keep getting more and more. Let's see. Linda Green asks, is there any move to changing public diet to whole food, plant-based, eating without animal products, including dairy? There is much research that as animal products go up in the diet, so does chronic disease like heart disease, diabetes, etc. Also that animal products contribute to environmental destruction more than even transportation across the world. That's a big question.
It's a good question. It's a good question, actually. And it's one that I, honestly, you know, I'm in various coalitions and groups, and there's one of them focused on that. And just, you know, considering like how can we all work together essentially, and making sure that we support the right types of farms and the right types of animal agriculture, and getting people to reduce their meat consumption to some degree. Whether or not that's going to happen, I don't know. But it was interesting in a conversation recently, somebody pointed out to me, I guess 7% of our population is vegetarian, and that number has not changed as far as I know ever. She said it was 7% at some other time when they started calculating how many vegetarians there were, I guess, and now there's still 7% vegetarians in our population. So I thought that was, I don't know where she got that data, but I was really shocked to hear that that's not going up, because it seems like as people become more aware of all of the things mentioned in that question, you would think that people would start changing at least some, you know, their diet to some degree, or reducing the meat consumption, or maybe, you know, switching over to vegetarianism, but it doesn't seem to be showing up, at least in the numbers yet. I do think that, you know, in the conversations that I have, I certainly try to encourage, I don't think people need to eat meat 3 times a day, 7 days a week. Certainly our protein levels can be, you know, we can reach the needed protein levels through lots of other foods besides meat. So I think, you know, that is certainly a good question, whether or not we will see real change. I can't answer that. I can't predict the future, but you know, there's a lot of interest in plant-based foods right now. There's a lot of corporations going after it. Unfortunately, it's a lot of the same corporations who are also, you know, building these CAFOs and supporting the industrial system. So I'm not sure. I would promote whole foods, regeneratively, you know, raised foods, and myself personally, that's me. I hope people will switch, and I hope that people will reduce their meat consumption and eat really good quality meat. And as I've said to lots of people that I talk to in conversation, if you can do one thing and one thing alone, it's just buy your protein, you know, your meat, your dairy, and your eggs from a local farmer that you know, and buy everything else at the grocery store. If you know, if you can just take one step to make a change, that will help the system, and that will help the work that we do.
Thank you. Okay, another question from Carolyn. Any suggestions what policies short of health ordinances we should be pursuing at the city and county level to help family farms?
Yeah, there was just the soil health legislation that was in Missouri that Scott was just responding to in an email. I think it was today you responded that. But what other, Ashlyn, I'm going to point this to Ashlyn and Scott for Missouri specific. Are there other types of policy or, you know, policies that support family farms in Missouri that you know of?
And I would say specifically too, if there's anything we could pursue at a city county level, because like we do have this in our climate action plan for Columbia,
Okay,
but we don't really know. I don't know that we know what we need to do as next steps. So
gotcha. Okay, I missed it. I'm sorry. Scott, you're on mute again.
I'm trying to be good about being on mute. My wife likes me better when I'm on mute.
Yes.
We're really blessed, you know, a good portion of, you know, we've got folks scattered all over the state here, but a good portion of the membership of the group here is local, and we're just really blessed. I think sometimes we take it for granted. We have Jake Davis and the Root Cellar. We have, you know, community supported agriculture. We've got a whole host of choices, you know, Patchwork Family, pork products, things like that. A lot of our restaurants, you know, are gotten on board and they're trying to serve good food, places that you can actually go eat at and be really proud of. So I think that's always an important thing, is to where you spend your food dollars. And Jake, you know, Sherri, you can speak to this. Jake, even though we take him for granted, probably because he's in our hometown, but Jake is a major mover and shaker nationally on large vision policy and stuff. So
Yeah.
we're just very fortunate that we have a lot of good choices here. Unfortunately, in a lot of rural Missouri, we don't.
Yeah.
But Scott, did you have any, the question was, did we have any suggestions on what policies, short of health ordinances, we should be pursuing? Do you have any suggestions for that?
Well, I was trying to avoid the question because it doesn't have a good answer.
I knew you were.
Well, that's okay. You could just say that.
No, I mean, the health ordinances were great. I mean, we were one of the only states in the country and they worked for over, 20 years. We pretty much fended them off on all these counties. And, that's what 391's all about, them trying to pick away at this. Again, I have to really compliment, the folks in Cooper, the folks in Cedar, the folks in Callaway, all these different community groups and their leadership. Sometimes they can get their township and their county people behind them. Sometimes they can't, but it reinforces again how important it is to keep that dialogue open. I know that when Fred Perry was still the presiding commissioner in Boone County, we'd worked on him for a couple of years. So had Missouri Rural Crisis Center to say, look, we don't need a health ordinance in Columbia in Boone County, but we are a class 1 county. We can pass any kind of an ordinance. And I think Kim would agree. We regret we didn't get that done. Before Fred moved on, we could still make another chance at that. But why should we wait until they build? Why should we have to try to fight off another CAFO and say the far northeast county part of Boone County when you can just take care of it now? And the way that the county is so heavily populated, what makes the most sense for Boone County is to do a distance type ordinance. You can only be within so many feet. A CAFO can only be within so many feet of an occupied dwelling, a public park, a church, residence, things like that. So it's very discouraging trying to work with the legislature. I mean, we in central Missouri have some outstanding state reps that try to do their best. But that's very discouraging. It really does all come down to local efforts and trying. And that's what I always tell people is, and that's when government works its best, I believe, when it's at its most local level. Not every county in the state has it, but a lot of the counties in the state do still have township control. Well, you can, most of our counties aren't big enough. You can drive around a little while and you can find your county commissioners and talk to them personally. The township commissioners don't have to drive more than 4 miles in any direction and you can find them. So
Scott, can I just do a follow-up? So are you saying that in Boone County, we still have an opportunity to do an ordinance even despite the SB 391 in the court case?
yes, because we are what's considered a class 1 county because of our size of population, like the city of Springfield, the city of Jackson, the city of Kansas City, city of St. Louis. We can still get something done here.
Okay, well, that's great. Yeah, I didn't realize that. So as I'm like you, there's no point waiting around till it's a crisis. So.
No, I don't like fighting them in my backyard. I don't like fighting them anywhere, but we should know better in Boone County. All we have to do is look at every county around us and they're all fighting.
Okay.
I'm going to butt in here. I really thought that when Fred Perry was the commissioner, we had 2 or 3 meetings with him. And Fred is a personal friend and he is absolutely opposed to concentrated animal feeding operations. And I thought we had him convinced to pass that ordinance that Scott was talking about, so many feet in occupied residence. But by the time he got voted out and Austin took his place, and maybe we need to talk to Austin.
Yeah, Justin. Okay. Yeah, that's why I thought it was all kind of on hold pending the outcome of this court case, but it sounds like there's still opportunities to do something. We just need to figure out what they are. So, and work with the county commissioners.
And really, we only have 2 CAFOs in the county right now. For those that aren't aware, Keith Snar's hog operation and Jan, help me, the brothers that raised the eggs, Stanton brothers.
The Stanton brothers. They're not confined.
No, they are actually CAFO sized. They just.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
They're a bit more of a compassionate CAFO in the way that they handle their animals.
Well, they're totally free range from what I understand.
Yes, they have converted.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay. And it looks like we had another question about from Christine. She asked, do you know the scale of international land acquisition for factory farming? And it looks like Sherri answered that in the chat. Sherri, did you want to say anything else about that other than what you've got here?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, I just went and I did a quick Google search because I did know that it was increasing. So I just found it on a website and pulled it up.
So that answer is there in the chat if you want to know the answer to that. Did anybody else have a question for Sherri or anything they wanted to make a comment on?
Yeah, I have a comment. I'm not real good at typing on the computer, but I am good at talking. The primary, whether you're talking state or federal legislators, they're about money. And I think as Huey Long said, I can't be bought, but I can be rented real cheap. So does, how can we possibly match Smithfield's money? Because all the regulations that we have were uniformly opposed by corporate agriculture. So what can be done about that?
That there were a lot of investors really thinking about, well, now this is investing in different food systems. So there are a lot, I feel like there's a lot of potential money out there for investing in better food and agriculture systems in terms of influencing policymakers. How do we match the money that's coming from the industry to influence those policymakers? I don't know. I don't know how to get, if I knew that, I would not, things would be different.
If we had a bunch of money, we could throw a bunch of money at it.
I know. Yeah. So I don't, but it's definitely a problem. I think it's a real problem. Actually, speaking of Jake Davis, Scott, Jake is creating a toolkit on about policy and about engaging lawmakers for SRAP to be able to teach communities about engaging lawmakers. And in that toolkit, he specifically talks with data about how much industry money is impacting or influencing policymakers. And so it's large. It's very large. I mean, he was just pulling up, I think, data from particular campaigns, and the money that's going into them from industry is enormous. So that speaks to the profit that these corporations are bringing in through this system, that they're able to throw that much money into influencing our laws to make sure that they can continue profiting.
And this is not anything new. I was director of the Sierra Club Clean Water Campaign, focusing on CAFOs. And when I went to Washington, D.C., I was met with just blank stares when I would ask people to support more regulation on corporate agriculture.
Yeah.
We didn't have any money either, so that's not a problem.
Yeah, I'd say that only people probably that get the worst, even worse treatment are the animal welfare folks going to talk to legislators. They really get, blank stares. But I think, I've been on Capitol Hill lots of times, and I've been in the same room with Farm Bureau and other organizations that really support the corporate agriculture system. And I've seen the reactions that we get when we're fighting for what we're fighting for, and the reactions that the other, trade organizations get when they're lobbying for corporate agriculture and fewer regulations because it's too much paperwork or whatever their reason is that they're going to throw out there for why they want it. So it's difficult. It's really difficult whenever there's so much money flowing to support the campaigns of people, and then they go in there and they want that, that relationship to continue. So I don't have an answer for it. I wish I did. I might be able to solve all the problems of the world.
Well, get working on that.
That'll be the next meeting.
What we do in the meantime, though, is it really goes back to what's always worked against power and influence, and that's people power. I mean, it's organizing people into small groups, and those groups into larger groups, and those groups into alliances, and those groups and alliances into coalitions, and
coalitions into movements.
Yeah, and I actually, just yesterday, I was in a meeting and somebody asked me like, what could happen in 10 years that would really help my work? And that's it. It's people power. It's getting, 50,000, 100,000. If we could get all of the impacted communities, all of the people engaged who care about these issues across the United States, sharing messages, working together, talking about the same issues, putting that pressure, that community pressure on legislators, I think we could really make a difference. But
Mhm.
it's a tough battle to get there. But if we could get lots of numbers of people, you got power in two different ways: money or people, and we need the people.
There is one last question from Susan, and Carolyn, I think maybe you're a better person to answer this. I'm not sure, but Susan asked, there is an empty seat on the Clean Water Commission at DNR. It is a seat that requires a member of the general public. Governor Parson needs to appoint someone. Who can lobby Parson to fill this?
Okay, well, first I would say that if anyone is interested in serving as a member of the public on the Clean Water Commission, that the Great Rivers Environmental Law Center is willing to help you put together your application and shepherd you through the process of getting appointed. They held a informational webinar on that a few months ago because there's multiple commissions in Missouri that have open seats that public could fill that would help influence environmental regulations in the state. And then beyond that, I guess it would really be up to the state the state Sierra Club chapter working with our coalition partners to put together a campaign to get the governor to fill that. But I think, one of the things we need to do is make sure we have a good nominee that's prepared to step in. So.
Okay, thank you. Could you repeat the name of that law firm?
Great Rivers Environmental Law Center.
Okay, thank you.
If anybody wants like the presentation on that or contact information, you can reach out to our email ID, which is sc.osage.group@gmail.com. And I'll put that in the chat.
Thank you. And then Cheryl, you've got your hand up. Did you want to?
Yes, I wanted to respond to Carolyn's question earlier about what policies or practices local communities might do that could make a difference. And I just wanted to share that in Stockton, which our population is less than 1,200, but in 2016, I organized Stockton's first ever Earth Day Festival. And I struggled to find businesses and organizations in this area that had earth-friendly practices that would qualify and meet our criteria to participate as vendors. And the best thing that I think came out of that was that I was able to identify several local farmers who brought produce in and sold it that day. Stockton has kind of a sad little farmers market that very few farmers know about and participate in. But that event, that community event, attracted beef farmers and a lamb farmer and a lady that sold alpaca fur. She had maybe it's not alpacas, llamas, some kind of furry animals that nearby that we didn't know about. And we had a shrimp farm in the area at the time. And all of these farmers came to the Earth Day Festival either to sell their produce or just to show their faces. And they got a lot of business about that. And, it was a great way of setting community awareness of local farming practices and products that were available. And I didn't even think about that when I was putting it together. I was just looking for people that met my criteria. But anyway, we're a small community and that might not help somewhere else, but it really made a difference here in our little part of the world.
Well, Cheryl, I really appreciate you sharing that because as I was making notes, I actually wrote down Earth Day Festival because I was trying to think back over our previous Earth Day festivals. If there's any, we have a lot of vendors, but they mostly sell crafts and stuff. And of course, we have a wonderful farmers market here where there are a lot of the local producers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody at the Earth Day Festival knows about the local farmers market and all those producers. So we could think about Sierra Club booth is to try and help people make that connection. So
That's a
Um,
good idea.
Yeah, just because we hadn't quite decided what we were doing with our Sierra Club booth this year, so. So thanks for sharing that.
Yes. Okay, well, I think that wraps us up for tonight. I really want to thank you, Sherri and Scott and Ashlyn, for coming tonight and sharing your experiences with us and what SRAP is all about. I'm sure a lot of people on the call found it very informative. It's very nice. Just SRAP is like a one-of-a-kind organization. I mean, you can't go anywhere else and get that kind of help. I just don't know of any other place you can go and have a team of people just willing to go to bat for you like that. And I want to thank you for your work and thank you for being here tonight with us. It was really, really informative. Thank you again.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the invite. I do want to say there are, a lot of organizations that we work in partnership with. SRAP is super special. We are on the ground, working with communities all over the country doing this work, but there are so many other partners that we partner with that are really important to this effort. I know, Ashlyn is really involved and Scott, both in Missouri with a lot of these groups, all like you all, coming to the table, being interested in these issues and really figuring out like how you can engage. That's what's important. It's that people power. And then we'll bring the organizations along. We'll try to bring our partners with it, to try to help you all in whatever you're trying to do. So it's not just SRAP, but we are pretty special and we are pretty mighty. I'm really, really, really proud of this team. So thanks for letting me share about it tonight.
Well, thank you. All right, with that, we'll wrap it up, everybody. And thanks for your attention and time.
Have a good
Bye.
night, everyone.
Thank you, Jan, for organizing.
Oh, you're welcome.